So I did want to hone in on California because California is one of the most ambitious EPR laws. So the EPR law is called SB 54, and there's a whole Plastic Packaging Act title to it. But essentially, by 2032, California hopes to achieve these three golden numbers. The first number being ensuring that all producers are putting 100% recyclable or compostable packaging onto the market by 2032. And this is really an obligation of the individual producer. And then the other two golden numbers are associated with the PRO, or Circular Action Alliance, who is going to be responsible for driving or meeting these targets as a collective through the producer community. And those two numbers are really getting a 65% recycling rate for plastic covered material by 2032. And this is really ambitious, a 25% source reduction of plastic material by weight and number of components by 2032. So CAA is going to be responsible for the other two goals. And the first one, it's really each individual who has to assess their packaging to see if it is compostable or recyclable with the state infrastructure. So these are the high-level goals set in statute, and this law was enacted in 2022. However, what has happened since then until now is really a series of informal rulemaking, draft regulations, and almost finalized regulation, but then the governor back then sort of reintroduced the process. And so we've had a little bit of back and forth into how the regulations have been shaping up, but we thought we got to a good place, and it was under review into the Office of Administrative Law. TLDR is that this proposed regulation was under review at the OAL's office, and it was awaiting finalization. And really at the end, when we thought that these rules might be finalized, we saw that CalRecycle, who is the regulator, had to withdraw its regulations from the OAL's review. And the reason cited for that is that CalRecycle plans to make the language in these regulations a lot more clearer and to sort of address some of the concerns that had come in from different groups. Some of the groups also citing that there are clear loopholes when it comes to food packaging and agricultural products packaging. And so CalRecycle wanted to take the opportunity to make this language more clearer before it opens up a 15-day public comment period. And we just got news that the 15-day comment period might start in a few weeks, so not months. And so hopefully that timeline is not too derailed. But if you are a producer and you want to provide your comments, it is a good opportunity to look out for when that comment window opens and to make your voices and concerns be heard. While all of this is happening, those 2032 statutory deadlines and timelines and goals remain unchanged. So whatever is happening in the rulemaking process is going to result in a compressed timeline for us to be able to implement and meet those targets. However, by and large, this so far appears to be a brief delay. It's not really looking at altering something drastic in the direction of the law. And once we're expecting that once those revisions are made, the comment period is open up, it'll go again for review, and then we'll sort of have those finalized regulations, hopefully sooner rather than later this year. All right, that's the big update on California. Another document that was released by CalRecycle as part of their mandate under the SB 54 update is to provide this yearly list of what are the covered material categories and what are the recycling rates associated with these covered material categories. So in the past, they have only released these categories and whether they might be deemed as recyclable or compostable. But in the edition that was released at the end of the year, they actually, for the very first time, put in recycling rates associated with those covered material categories. And so it's a really important document to look through. And as we can see, there is quite a difference between what is technically recyclable and what is actually and practically recyclable in the state. We're seeing very low percentages of recycling rates in some categories. And the big one to look out for is plastics. Plastics have really low recycling rates, with the highest one being HDPE, which is still under 23%, but some of the other plastics are in the single digits. And so in order for us to meet that 30% recycling rate by 2028, and then a 65% recycling rate by 2032 seems like quite of a steep ladder to climb, and we will need to track that closely. And hopefully with the implementation of the program and the flow of dollars into the recycling infrastructure in California, those numbers will start to increase. So if you haven't already looked at this, do look at this recent document from CalRecycle. And a small update on compostables that I wanted to throw in here is that compostable plastics is coming under a lot of scrutiny because something can be labeled compostable only if the USDA NOP, which is the National Organics Program, allows it to be used as feedstock for composting processes. And towards the end of the year, we got an update that bioplastics or any materials that have any sort of plastic components associated with it have not been approved by the USDA to be labeled as compostable. And so there is a little bit of a friction there between the Compostable Products Institute, Biodegradable Products Institute, the compostable products manufacturing companies, to see kind of how that could be altered over time. And so there is a pending decision or a timeline by 2027 to iron that out. But so far, USDA has said that those will not be allowed for use as input for feedstock. So just an update about what's happening in these two worlds as you start to think about how to make your products compostable and recyclable as per the state definitions. All right, we can go next. Okay, so outside of California world, just want to bring back some of the important reporting schedules and dates, key dates that you need to keep in mind as you start to build your teams internally to prepare for your 2026 reporting cycle. So as we know, we have 7 states. Oregon, Colorado, and California will have detailed reporting on May 31st. And this will essentially be reporting your 2025 data. So now's the time to start collecting your sales data from 2025 by state, doing your apportionments so that you have all of this data ready for that May 31st timeline. We also will have simplified reporting for Minnesota, Maryland, and Washington. This is also due on May 31st. So what is the difference between simplified supply report and the annual detailed report? It's really the amount of categories you report into. So in a simplified report, you would report across 6 to 8 material categories, give or take. And in the detailed material reporting, you'll report anywhere between 60 to 95 categories. So that's really where things become tricky. I see Lowell nodding his head. But that's really where folks like us can help in terms of helping you think through all of those different categories and where your products might fall into. I just did want to call out that Maine is a small outlier in this process. They also have a simplified report due, but because they haven't finalized their stewardship organization, it is likely that this report will be in Q3 and there will be some startup fees in Q4. And I did want to call out on California outside of this May 31st deadline where you'll be submitting 2025 data, we will also need to resubmit our 2023 data once the regulations are finalized. Initially, this was supposed to be in February, but it's now TBD based on the regulation status that we just went through. But whenever the regulations are finalized, you may have to resubmit your November 2023 baseline report. And also keep your eyes peeled for the individual source reduction plan, where you would have to sort of use 2023 data as a baseline year and then create your plan to reduce plastics that would collectively help us reach that 25% reduction number by 2032. Okay. In terms of fees, I think we've all started to see invoices come out for especially the producers who are registered. It really makes everything very real to see those invoices and know that those dollars are flowing into the recycling system in these states. So Oregon and Colorado have released their 2026 invoices through CAA, and we know that producers are in the process of finishing these payments. For those who completed their 2025 Oregon reports, you probably already had your 2025 invoice as well. So altogether, there have been 3 invoices that have been issued if you've been following all of the timelines and reporting schedules. For California, we will have the first fee payment in August this year, and that will be based on the data that you submit on May 31st, 2026. And again, this is an early fees concept. It is not the final fees. It's almost like a pre-program fee. And this is really to help CAA start up the program in 2027. Maine will also follow a similar structure to California, where they have this concept of startup fees before the program launch. And so those fees are expected to occur in Q4 2026. And we all know that there are some other states which do not have full reporting right now, but will start with their simplified reports this year. They're in various stages of their development. Some are in needs assessment, all of them are in rulemaking. And so this is just to give you a snapshot of what's happening with these states, but we will have obligations starting this year.